The Doomer Bloomer podcast is a community for the resurrection of good ideas. We profile the hero's journey in weekly episodes and teach people about the 10 pillars framework for success in life, business, and relationships. Our mission is to find and help all Doomer Bloomers with mental health issues, poverty mindset, lack of resources, and those left behind in this world. Tune in weekly with Will S. and occasionally John Wynn as we have deep conversations with guests about the hero's journey, clown world order, and the resurrection of good ideas. To help support our community, go to www.thedoomerbloomerpodcast.com/support to become a member today. And remember, we are the cure for COVID-19. And we're live. Welcome back to the Doomer Bloomer podcast with Will S. And occasionally John Wynn. We are on the hero's journey each week, talking about the 10 pillars framework for life, success in relationships and business. Today on the podcast, I have Brandon White all the way from Half Moon Bay in California. How are you doing this morning, Brandon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. You messaged me on Matchmaker, which I'm calling the Tinder for podcasting.
I did because you guys look cool, but you have the coolest logo. I mean, I actually think that you've outdone Joe Rogan.
Well, thank you. That's quite the compliment.
I mean, look at Joe Rogan. Joe's logo is really cool, but yours just pops, man. Yeah, it's really cool.
Compliment of 99 designs. Spent quite a few hours getting people.
It works, right?
Getting people to build that for me. As you alluded to, it kind of means different things for different people. I mean, what do you think when you saw it, what came to your mind?
Grateful Dead concert and a really cool military army patch. And like we talked about, I think it's just whatever lens your life allows you or facilitates you seeing, that's what you really see in it. But there's plenty to see in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the Doomer Bloomer, resurrection of good ideas. It's got it's got quite a lot of symbolism in there, to be honest. And for yourself, where are you on your hero's journey, your Doomer to Bloomer path? Kind of briefly tell us your story, Brandon.
Well, I hope that I'm on the upswing. And it appears so, but I started my entrepreneur career. I'm going to fast forward from the failing lemonade stand that my brother and I had when we were little kids, and move to my 20s. But I started and ran the largest social networking and e-commerce site for sport fishermen on the internet. And I did that in 1996. Mainly because I had failed to print a magazine because I realized after going to the local printer that there was no way that I had enough money to print a magazine at that time. So there was this thing called the internet, and I've always been a geek. Started on a VIC-20 and then a Commodore 64. And all in college, I was on what we now call the internet, on forums, and we called them bulletin boards. I think they're still called that today, some people. And actually, to be honest, not a lot has changed in the internet to me. There's different brands that have upgraded technology, but for the most part, we're still doing the same business model, doing doing the same stuff. But I think we've figured out what works and doesn't work. But I, at the time, said, why couldn't we put a magazine online and then we could sell products and then we could have a membership with that? And I sort of combined what was existed in the print realm, physical space at the time. And in I guess it was late 1996, 97, we launched what became the largest social networking site and e-commerce site for sport fishermen. And I didn't know what I was doing, candidly, as it relates to business, but I read an article in the front of Time magazine, which you should be old enough to remember,
Oh,
maybe.
I have my grandmother's and my mother's Time magazines.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You just killed me. You're like stabbing me on Saturday morning. You're making me feel old. Your mother and your grandmother. Okay, boys and girls, here we go. It's Saturday morning. I'm really feeling uplifted here on this podcast. I'm kidding.
Well, it is
So
the Doomer Bloomer podcast.
I know I'm going to go with this as part of your stick, and that it needs to be this. And I'm not going to feel old. I'm not that old. I started early in my career, but it all depends. Maybe people out there listening think people in their 40s are old. Who knows? But it's not old. So in the front of Time magazine, there used to be new and noteworthy things, and there was really only half a page, I think, as I remember it. And I read an article that these two guys, Jerry Yang and David Philo, were building the quote unquote internet of the phone book. I mean, phone book of the internet. That's dyslexia possibly for you right there. And I said, well, it looks like they just raised like $1.5 million or $1.7 million from this venture firm, which I had researched, called Sequoia Capital, which is probably the most successful or one of the top 3 for sure. And I was like, well, why wouldn't we just raise money? So I got in the car with my now wife and we drove to Annapolis, Maryland, where we were in Maryland at the time, bought a How to Build a Business Plan book at Barnes and Noble, and drove home. I read it, wrote a business plan, and I just started talking to people. I saw a guy in my alumni magazine who said that he was going to become an investor. I wrote him. He was a senior when I had been a freshman. I had gone back to school, actually, and was working on my master's in psychology at the time. I should say that I had literally failed because during college, and I don't know what everybody else does out there, but there's always this pressure like, oh, you're in college. What are you going to do when you graduate? And it's this very simple question that you get, but has large implications if you really don't answer it right. One of those. And I said, my answer always was I was going to become a lawyer. And because as soon as you say that, what I realized was as soon as you say that, nobody asks you any more questions, because everybody, it's like, oh, well, okay, well, now we know what he's going to do. He's going to go to law school. He's going to become a lawyer. He's going to charge by the hour, go work at a law firm, yada, yada. And candidly, Bill, I had done nothing to prepare myself to become a lawyer, because I didn't do any internships during college. I was a psychology major, which I loved. I was a sociology minor, so I didn't even have a political science minor. And when I graduated college, I went back working on a tree farm where I had been working and still living at home. And I think my mom realized that as a single mother who had sacrificed a lot to make sure that my brother and I had went to good schools and had good things, she thought that I'm sure she loved her son, but realized that her investment was not going to end up working at the tree farm. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I did not own the tree farm. I was a worker at the tree farm. So she said, go back to school, because I had taken the LSTATs and done terribly. I'm a National Honor Society student. I was Psych-Hi National Honor Society president, graduated second in my class in high school, got the governor's award, but I have dyslexia and I can't take a standardized test to save my life. So
I also have dyslexia.
yeah. So, up until probably a decade ago or maybe 15 years ago, I thought it was a hindrance. Then you realize that it's actually a superpower. And once you do that, sort of changes your life, which was a pivotal moment for me. But um, I went back to school and I was working on my master's, and that's when I started this website and wrote the business plan. A quick story that's interesting and fun, and I think will give everybody out there hope that it can happen to you, because it really can happen to you. Your life can change. You can have a pivotal moment where meeting one person or one conversation or one decision you make can completely change your life. And I, as I wrote this guy who was in the alumni magazine, we had been talking and he was interested in investing, of which I didn't know what that meant other than we needed some money. One day he sent me an email. And he said, I had lunch with this guy and he's from Silicon Valley. He retired early and he's living out here on the East Coast. And we mentioned what we did for fun, which was fishing. And I mentioned that I was thinking about investing in these two guys because I had a partner at the time doing this fishing site. He asked the name and he actually has been using your site and he would like to see you. So I wrote back, yeah, I'd love to meet him. Sure. Tell him to email me. So 2 hours later, again, the email says, hey, my name is Tom. I was a original partner at Sequoia Capital. You might know us. We did Yahoo, Cisco, Apple, and a few other big companies. And Google had not taken off at the time, so it wasn't on the list, but subsequently they've done that, YouTube and probably 100 other ones. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to see you. Here's my address. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Now, the reason I responded like that is because to get an email like that from such a person that you've put up there as unreachable is sort of crazy. And to think that this guy is going to show up on your doorstep. Well, the next morning there was a knock at the door and sure enough, he showed up on my doorstep and he's like, hey, how you doing? I said, hey, thanks so much for coming. He said, can we see your office? I was like, come on up. And he sort of looked at me. I was like, it's in the spare bedroom. So we walk up. My wife and I lived in this little house, 1,400 square feet. I only mentioned that to say, because it was a small house, but we were really happy. We didn't suffer a single day there. But we went upstairs. He looked around. He looks at me, looks around again. So now my heart is starting to race. I'm feeling a little hot, thinking, like, am I going to be in trouble? Is this guy disappointed? Maybe this is just terrible. I have no idea. And he said, is this it? And I was like, hey, look, I am really sorry. You drove all the way over here I was living on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, from the Western Shore. And yeah, this is it. I said, my partner has a spare bedroom down the road we can go to. But if you came here looking for something bigger, I really apologize. I didn't mean to lead you into this or anything. And he said, calm down. He said, this is how we found Cisco, Brendan. They were making routers in their living room. I was like, okay. He said, but you do sound a lot bigger. And I had all the phones bill rigged, but it made it look like you went through this whole thing, this whole thing about getting a hold of us. And we did answer the phone. I just wanted to look like we were quote unquote professional. So he said, let's go to lunch. We went to lunch. He turned over the placemat and we did the business plan after we had spent weeks, maybe months writing a business plan that was 50 pages because it was an old school business plan, which you don't need to do today, but did the business plan on the back of a placemat. He folded up in his pocket and he's like, oh, well, this sounds generally good. And I said, well, how about we how about we hook up my boat and we go fishing? I said, I'd love to. So we hooked up the boat and we went fishing in Chesapeake Bay had a great time. On the way home, he says to me, how much money do you have in your business account? And I said, well, that's an interesting question because my partner and I trade stocks to fund the company. And he said, what? You use company money? I said, well, my company. And I figured it's my money and it's an investment. I said, we are building web pages and we're doing web work and selling some advertising, but it's not significant at this moment. So we figured that we could trade stocks because we were halfway decent at it. And he just shook his head. And I was driving, I'm pulling a 21-foot center console Parker down the road at 60 miles an hour. So I'm trying to pay attention. But I do notice he pulls out a checkbook. And for those of you who don't remember what a checkbook is, but this little thing that's binded, that's a piece of paper that you write on. And I'm halfway joking here, but it was ratty. It was really like, it was worn out. But he writes this thing and he's like, here. And I look down while I'm driving and it's $50,000. And he says, let's go. And that's how we kicked off a fundraising effort of which I had no idea how to do, that wound up raising $1 million for this company. And we grew that company. It's called Worldwide Angler at the time. It started out as Chesapeake Angler. And in 2001, your listeners and you may recall that the .com crashed and .com stock market crashed. And at that point, everyone thought that the internet was going away. And I did not believe the internet was going away. And candidly speaking, I had no choice but not to believe that, because the only thing that I had ever created of that magnitude was on the internet. And to think that it was going away was crazy. So we got in a lawsuit. We had a lot of, those times were, I don't want to say they were miserable, and they weren't doom or gloom, but they sure didn't look like the sun was going to come out tomorrow. And didn't see a rainbow with anything at the end. But I decided to buy the assets back from the investors. We closed down that company. We laid off everybody, which was absolutely horrible. And I just did not give up. And within probably 3 or 4 months, that company was running a profit. And I ran it as a cash cow, candidly. For a long time, in between, I'd worked for America Online in marketing analysis and premium services. And then I worked for 2 venture capital firms, and decided after, so I never finished my master's at that time in psychology. I had left to build that company. And then when I went into venture capital, the partners that I worked for were really incredible. And I thank them to this day. They encouraged me that I needed to get an MBA if I wanted to be in venture capital. So I got my MBA from UNC Chapel Hill. I also finished my master's degree. So I had finished that in psychology. And I decided that I was going to quit the venture capital, where I was going to go, quote unquote, back to being an entrepreneur. And I developed a 5-year plan. My wife, been together for 25 years. We figured out the other day. I think we've been married for 14, maybe it's 10, married 10 and together for 14 before that. Anyway, she's from California, and I had always wanted to be in Silicon Valley for no other reason than California for a kid who grows up in Maryland is a world away. But it was always the cool place. And Silicon Valley was this magical place to me that I wanted to be. And I also realized, at least in my mind, I'm not saying that you can't build companies in other places. And there's tons of examples where you can do that. My idea was that I wanted to lower the risk to build another company. And if you're going to do that, being in Silicon Valley is a good way to lower that risk and to give you a better chance, mainly because the ecosystem out here and the fact that you can run into anybody. My neighbor is Phil Schiller, who is the head of all marketing for Apple. And I followed him the other day when on his way to work. I mean, that's not just something that can happen in other places of the world, quite candidly. And you can bump into, a person riding your bike at the top of Tanitas Creek Hill that can change your life. So that was my goal. Houses out here are really, really, really expensive, but I built a 5-year plan to get an exit from that social networking e-commerce site. And about 4.5 years in, it happened. A company had come to us. I will say that I made a major mistake with Worldwide Angler. We expanded too fast. When I bought it back, I readjusted the vision and said that I'm only going to own my local market, and I am not going to deviate from that. And that was a really hard lesson. We did grow too fast at Worldwide Angler, in my opinion. And the strategy for me was stay focused on this quote unquote local market, which was the Chesapeake Bay and Mid-Atlantic region for saltwater fishing. Absolutely own it. And then from there, I was hoping that if we built something great that people loved, that someone would want to buy it and have that as part of a roll-up strategy. Or I decided that I would go out and do a roll-up strategy only with people who were as good as we were in a region. And it turns out that a big media company in Canada, of all places, who owned a ton of magazines at the time and was building an online presence and still exists to this day, called Vertical Scope, came knocking at the door and said, we want to do a roll-up in this fishing space. Are you interested in selling? And probably over 6 weeks, we did that negotiation. I sold the company on a Wednesday and bought the house right here on the ocean in Half Moon Bay, California, that I am broadcasting to you from today with that money. And there was paid off school loans and did a bunch of other stuff. So that is my story. I've had an incredible career. I've built another company. I'm an angel investor here now. And ironically, after 25 years, actually am now publishing a newsletter. It's not in fishing, but it is for small, medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs on mind, body, and business. So I find that ironic. And it is actually a print newsletter, and you can only get the content in print. I do not put any of it online, period. So I don't know if that's like my celebratory thing, but it is ironic. But that's sort of my, if you will, the hero's journey. I don't think that I'm a hero. I think that I did it out of pure survival and determination, possibly craziness, or a combination of all of them.
I love it. Tell me about going fishing with Warren Buffett.
Well, I actually didn't go fishing with Warren Buffett. So the story there is, but Warren Buffett is involved. I had a guy contact me through our social network. And at the time we were getting several, depending on where you want to talk about, but we were getting several 100,000 fishermen coming to the site. And I had an email list at the time of about 100,000, which was, and still is to this day, a decent sized email list. And a guy wrote me and he said, hey, are you interested in going fishing on Friday? And look, man, like that was my job. I needed to fish all the time, take pictures of fish, write fishing reports. And I always loved meeting new people. So I said, sure, I meet this guy. I actually fished with him every Friday for probably a few months before we ever got to talk about what he did. And it turns out that this guy's name's Chris Coyle. I'll forever be grateful. He gave me a money clip that I carry every single day of my life to this day. And we still talk. He just lives in Florida and I live in California, so it hadn't been as easy to fish together. But he had built a real estate company and sold it to Merrill Lynch. I think when he was like 32 or 33, had a 5-year non-compete, got a ranch in Montana, had some fun the day after the 5-year non-compete, came back, built another real estate company, commercial real estate and residential real estate company, took that company public, and then Warren Buffett bought that company, took it private, which is part of the now Berkshire Hathaway real estate type of thing. And Chris was on the board with Warren of that company for many years. And I continued to fish with Chris every single Friday. And we traveled around the world. We went to Guanaja, Honduras together. We went to the Bahamas together on week-long trips. And I basically was getting the wisdom. And ironically, for any listeners, well, I don't know when you're going to publish this, but I'm excited today, Bill, because Berkshire Hathaway actually has their annual meeting, and I always love listening to Warren Buffett's long talks that he gives. So he starts today. It's Saturday, but it was an absolutely incredible, and I am grateful to this day for what Chris did for me. Chris is a very competitive person, very, very kind heart. Um, but he needed a person to go fishing with him every Friday because the way he had his schedule is that he would work 4 days and have Fridays off, which I've tried to adopt because I think it actually really clears your mind. But the things that I learned and the lessons he taught me driving to the fishing destination. I mean, Bill, some days we would drive 2.5 hours. We would drive 2.5 hours to fish a creek or a river or something somewhere for an hour to to come back, another 2.5 hours to get just this fishing place. I remember we drove 3 hours one day. He wanted me to take me to a creek of a cabin near where he used to have a little getaway place. And it was 3 hours and we literally fished 45 minutes. We caught really incredible native trout in Maryland up in the mountains, which I'll never forget. And they ironically, they're super small. There's little fish, but just an incredible experience. So in those, in those, in all that time, travel time, um, I learned an incredible amount about business and to have a guy, and the funny part is he's so humble. I was like, so you're on the board with Warren, like you saw him 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Six
On the board.
degrees of separation, right?
Yeah. So you never know who you're going to find. I think having an audience, if you're in some capacity, you're going to meet incredible people and people that'll change your life. And I think one thing that Chris did for me, among some other people, including that guy, Tom, who we became lifelong friends. And he's really my best friend to this day. But these people who do things for you in your life that don't need to do it, that may not completely understand the impact that they have on you is incredible. And it's really why I try to pay it back as much as I can. I give away everything that I have knowledge-wise for free, but what I found, Bill, is that when you give things away for free, everybody says they want free, and then they get free, and then they don't use what's free. But if they pay for it, somehow it becomes more valuable, and they actually use it. So in my experience, what I found is that I would give my newsletter away for free. I'd even pay for it so that it would help someone. But what I found is people don't use free stuff. They use things they pay for. So as hard as it is for me to charge for that, because I really, for a lot of things, but I do give away a lot for free. And if somebody is really in a bind and I think they're going to use the knowledge that I have and lessons learned, then I'll give it away. But isn't that ironic that when you want things for free, but you don't use the things for free? I think all the t-shirts I got for free are generally still in my drawer, but the ones I paid for, including the one I have on, is the ones I wear. So,
I think there's something to be said. I think we definitely. I say we. Well, I mean, they say you vote with your wallet, right? Things that you find valuable, you know what I mean, will ultimately, uh, versus getting getting the free milk versus doing effort. I don't think human beings can get away with not doing things without some effort. Whether that's subscribing to a podcast or buying some swag or you know it's yeah, it's something to be said anyways.
for sure. But for them, uh, they changed my life. I call those moments pivotal moments when you have these things where you meet someone or you have an experience or you make a decision in your life. There's been a lot of pivotal moments that I've made decisions that have completely changed the trajectory of my life that looking back are pretty incredible. And I look forward to some other pivotal moments on, what the future has to hold for me. It certainly has been a windy road experience wise that has been really enjoyable for me so far.
Well, here's a question for you. What have you done differently, like with the COVID situation? Like, has that affected you or your businesses at all? because I've had to completely change what I used to do. Like the person that I am now is not the person I was 18 months ago. You know what I mean? So
Have the real answer for me is not a lot has changed other than apparently I had gained about 5 pounds, which I was in denial about. But
oh yeah, the COVID-15 or the
um,
COVID-19.
yeah, I mean, I ride my bike a lot and I'm conscious, but yeah, it still happened. But for me, to be candid, I've been an advocate of remote teams
Mm,
for 20 years. And as a guy in the tech space, it hasn't been something that I've found you absolutely need. And anybody who, there were a lot of naysayers before COVID that said you have to have an office and you have to have this. I find it absolutely ironic that a lot of companies just in this quarter are reporting bigger, better earnings and growth than they ever have pre COVID. So I find it ironic that the people who said that you needed to have an office you needed to have it, but these companies still survived. And previous to COVID, there were plenty of examples. I mean, there's this thing called Linux, which is a operating system that was designed by about 2,000 engineers that are all remote, never met, and I don't think have a Jira board. I'm halfway joking about the Jira board because I haven't tuned into that in a long time. But my point is that you can do things remotely. There's a ice cream company, I think it's called Halo ice cream. It's like low calorie ice cream. It's based out of LA. They have 400 employees and they built a product company with all remote team. Um,
yeah.
so for my wife and I, we always, for the most part, worked from home. My dentist told my wife that this was the perfect storm for me because I had been preparing it my whole life, meaning we work from home and we're set up that way. I think for a lot of people that was hard. I think still working from home it can be hard. It's distracting. You got to get good at it. And
You
if you're
gotta
in
be
sales, even harder.
you gotta be disciplined, right? Like that's what I transitioned into, um, and it comes down to discipline and you got to know yourself, right? Know like but that's the difference between an owner mentality and an employee mentality, I think.
Yeah, I think you have to also create a space for yourself in your home and you
Mm.
need to be able to shut the door and you got to have a real honest talk with your family or partner whoever that is that there's going to be some boundaries because it does bleed over and it also can seem never ending because there's no start or finish per se and humans tend to need a start and finish that designates where those lines are, and that doesn't happen from working from home. And I also say that I think doing sales, if you're in sales, is super hard when you are used to meeting people in person and having a conversation, and now you got to figure out how to do online marketing. And online marketing, candidly, isn't that difficult, but it's hard to figure out in the initial stages when you're trying to figure out this online world.
Well, I mean, I'm with you there. I am running like my latest pet project, well not pet project, but is I'm trying to build a virtual renewable energy company in Canada. It's called Yukon Gold Energy.
I
And
like that.
I've been working on that for almost 2 years now, like just like in my side time. Right? Are you still there, Brandon?
I'm still here.
Um, but it's got a website now, and I have a podcast for it. The Yukon Gold Podcast is the main marketing arm of that. But I like your no work on Fridays. My business partner Terrence always used to say, "Start slow on Fridays and taper down." But that's when we were electricians. So
Yeah,
um,
I think that I think that old traditions are interesting, but don't mean that that's the future. And I've, at least in my experience with the companies that I've had where we've done this, I find people are way more productive. Um, and
Yeah.
there's this tendency to fill time. And if you can create urgency to get something done, it's actually pretty darn amazing what you can get done in 5 hours time. Because I would argue working in an office, maybe you're productive 4 hours of that time. The other time you're probably getting interrupted. You're probably talking or taking breaks. And then there's the mental load of, I've got to get in my car. And if you're going to fight traffic for whatever that is, that all of these things affect your ability to focus and be productive. And I think that if you can compress that, you'll be amazed at how much you've got done. And I come back into Monday feeling like a human, not like a human who got run over by a truck who finished work at 5:30 on Friday. Only, I mean, let's be honest, you're not decompressed Friday night after work. You're probably not even getting into a restful flow until Saturday night at best. You wake up Sunday, and then by Sunday at noon, your heart starts racing because you're anticipating having to wake up at dark 30 and start work again. And I don't see any rest there. Whereas, if you can finish hard on Thursday, whatever time that is, and then wake up or sleep in or do whatever on Friday without this pressure, it it will really change you. So I recommend it. For some people, you may not want to go to every Friday. We did one company where we did every other Friday, and that seemed to, at least for the engineers that work for us, they really liked that better. I think there's a flow. I don't think there is a flow when you're in projects. I find it when I don't write code anymore, but when I'm writing, I have to write this newsletter every month, and I do a lot of writing in general. That flow state you don't always want to break, in the sense of, well, in the sense of that there's this long intermission because it's hard to get back up, but every other Friday for sure. And there are big companies that actually do that. My friend works for a big company here in Silicon Valley, and they do it. And the other thing I also have that I do with my companies is, I'm not going to regulate your day. I think
Yeah.
you need to be available from 11 to 2 o'clock Pacific time, because that's the main always headquarters, for at least for me at this
Well,
time.
I follow verse 17 of the Tao Te Ching, which basically says the anchor of the universe is inside of you, and you already know what it is you're supposed to do, and you don't need someone micromanaging you. It essentially means don't micromanage people.
Yeah, I actually do what Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia calls the MBA, and that's not the MBA that I paid $110,000 for. That's management by absence. I expect people to self-regulate, and if they can't, then we picked the wrong person,
I agree.
and that's my responsibility, or the hiring person's responsibility at that point. That's not that person's responsibility, and it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that that's not the fit for how we operate.
Yeah, hire for fit and teach the skills. That's another thing that I've learned in my journey as well.
Yeah, I call it hire athletes, at least in early stages of small teams. I think once you get to a 50 plus person company, you're going to start to hire snipers who are really good at that one thing, because you have systems and procedures and processes in place that are repeatable, that you need someone to execute and then potentially tweak. So I think there is when, and it might be 100 depending on where your company tipping point and what your culture is. But I agree with you, Bill.
I love it when people agree with me.
Well, that's always a good thing.
In your journey, what are some resources that have helped you along the way?
That's a really good question. I think I don't have a resource, but I have a process that I think you should read a lot. I mean, if I never read that, I read every day in the library. If I didn't read that article in the front of Time magazine, I don't know where I would be today. I'd also say that you should, I don't say should. In my experience, the thing that has greatly helped me is having a very diverse group of people that I am friends and colleagues with. What does that mean? Well, it means I go to Burning Man. It means that I have friends who are complete geeks. I have friends who are one of my best friends is a UPS truck driver and has been for I think he has like 30 years in. Um, and to mechanics, to doctors, to lawyers, to um, anything, anything across surfers, bikers. I mean, lacrosse players. I just keep going down. Fishermen, fly fishermen, saltwater fishermen. I in my life, I've found it more interesting to be and interact with multiple groups and than I have being stuck in one group. And I think it gives you a different perspective. It allows you to take ideas. My career has been crazy. I went from doing an online fishing site, social networking site, to working in the government, to doing fishing clothing. I mean, it's been so diverse, but I think all of those experiences have allowed me to be more creative, think differently, and even have a more positive outlook on life when you're part of a very small group. And I'm not saying that support groups aren't good, but I am suggesting that it tends to say this us and them. And, last I checked, we're all humans who live on Earth. And I think that now that we're exploring other planets, that may be how we define ourselves versus, hey, I'm a Californian or I'm a Texan or, I'm a Montana cowboy or whatever that is. It's going to be more towards, well, I'm a earthling. And at least for me, that might not answer your question specifically as someone listening to say, well, I'm looking for that one resource that's really magical. I'd suggest to you that if you're looking for that one resource that's really magical, that would be find yourself first and understand who you are as a person and understand your core value and the framework of which you live. Because once you figure that out, which I'm not suggesting is easy, it is hard. And maybe why I invested in a undergraduate in psychology and master's in psychology. And I work with a sports psychologist for many, many, many years. And I still take courses and work on myself. But once you find yourself, here's the magic of that. The magic of that is that you wake up in the morning and don't need to figure out who you are and get reconciliation with your struggles. You actually get to wake up and execute. And it's like having a business plan for your business. If you don't have a business plan for your business, then you wake up every morning trying to figure out what you need to do and and who you need to listen to figure out what you need to do versus you have a business plan, you wake up in the morning, you execute on those ideas. I'm not saying they don't change. I'm just saying the mental load is really easy. So I wake up every morning um, knowing what my framework is. And the other thing, just while I'm on this roll, is want what you have. And once you do that, I'm not suggesting that means that you are, what is the right word? That you are saying that that's it. That you're saying, well, I'm here.
You're not settling.
Yeah, you're not. That's the right word. Thank you for that. It's a little early in the morning for me still. You're not settling for. You can still want these other goals and aspire to them, but I will suggest that unless you want what you have today, it's going to be very hard for you to feel satisfied when you do get what you think you want, because you didn't ever wanted what you had to start with. And I think that wanting what you have leads to being grateful for what you have, because even if you're poor and you might be living in your car, that's a lot more than some other people have in the world. And I know that can be used a lot, but I don't think that's comparing yourself. I think that's just having a little perspective to bring it back down to home so that you take responsibility for yourself.
Well, I like how you say it starts with gratitude. I recommend everyone have their own gratitude journal. Alexa reminds me every morning at 7 o'clock, do my gratitude. Because if you're not taking stock of what you already have, then you're never going to appreciate when you do arrive. And as the Tao Te Ching says, you need to get from striving to arriving, right? If you're not, it's like you said, once you have that business plan or master plan for your life, it's not striving anymore. It's just you're executing the plan every day. Like I have no, not a lot of people know this about me, but I have a plan that flows out to the year 2089.
I like that.
I know where I'm going to be in 2045. I'm going to be in one of two places, either the Baja in Mexico or Teslin in the Yukon. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Because I took a lot from Jim Carrey, where you ask the universe for what you want, and then, like you say, execute on it. You know what I mean? And I don't know, if I was going to write a book, the first line of the book was going to be, in order to get where you want to go in life, you need to start from your destination and to connect the dots in reverse, or something to that effect.
I think that's, some people call that visualization. And I will tell you that I've used visualization every day in my life. I got taught, I was really lucky to meet a sports psychologist that was one of my mom's good friend's husband. And for whatever reason, he took me on for not a lot of money. And I met with him almost every week or twice a week for many, many years. And an example of how visualization can lead you to success, I have a picture on my phone, because I used to do the visualization in a notebook with scrap pictures about my future and all of that sort of stuff. And then I moved it to my phone. It was just easier. But I have a picture, Bill, of a house on the water, overlooking the ocean. And the irony of that picture is that you can't see the beach because it's on a cliff. Now, why I would pick that picture 20 years ago is odd to me, because I'm from the East Coast originally, and our beaches in the mid-Atlantic in general do not have cliffs overlooking the ocean. It's basically sandbars from Ocean City, Maryland, New Jersey, even Montauk. These Montauk has some cliffs, but in general, that North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, there's not cliffs. There's, it's a beach that is the land is at sea level. So if I show you a picture looking out my window right now, you see the Pacific Ocean, but you don't see the beach because we live on a 74-foot cliff. Now, you could say that was chance. You could say that was whatever you want, but I find it very ironic that is literally the view out my kitchen window. And I have that picture from almost 20 years ago in my visualization journal that I did every day.
Wow. I designed my first house when I was 17. So
there you go. You can do this. One thing I'll say, that when you were talking before I was listening, I don't want to forget this point. Another reason it's really important to find out who you are and know your why, if you will, and your framework of how you're going to live, or your moral compass. And I don't mean this in some crazy, that moral compass really allows you to make decisions very easily because you know what you will and will not do and why. And unless you get there, you almost can't find the successes. So for me, it took many, many years. I mean, I read a book by Malcolm Gladwell that basically talked about, it was David and Goliath book he wrote, and it talks about how all these people have dyslexia and they're incredibly smart. That was a pivotal moment for me because it changed my life from, oh man, you have dyslexia and you're screwed, to, oh my God, your dyslexia has been your superpower and you're actually like lucky that you have this thing. And what happens then, so that helped me accept who I was and not fight it and acknowledge it and take responsibility for it, whether it was I have it. I got to take responsibility that that's mine. And what happens then is that you can have these successes. So I remember, Bill, making $1 million was something to me that was, I don't know, inconceivable, like untouchable. But I struggled to get to that, make $1 million in 12 months, and even a business to get to $1 million in revenue for a long time, until I found myself. And once I found myself, this weird thing happened, which was, it's like when I sold that company, I was like, oh my God, I read about all these people and all these magazines and online that sell their companies and make this money and they have financial freedom. And now they've done this. And I was like, is that for me? And then when it happened, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this again. And in order to get, and when you get that, there's this incredible self-confidence that comes, and that catapults all of these other things in your life. But in my opinion, I guess I get to have somewhat of a strong opinion, maybe because I have a master's and studied all this for a long time in psychology, is that you got to find yourself, because once you find yourself, you'll get that. And then that will breed something better. And the thing that you thought was never achievable. I never thought in a million years I'd live in a house that was worth over $1 million. I was like, that is for rich people. But that self-talk, that language, but I was combating it with my vision, working on myself. And then once that happened, man, like it just, it's like riding your bike on a century. You're like, oh, I'll never ride 100 miles. I go ride 100 miles today. And then you're like, then you get that confidence. And I can't say enough about that to your listeners. It's really important.
Well, I say confidence breeds competence, or competence breeds confidence. Like, it's kind of an interchangeable relationship, right? Like, I didn't always know how to do the things that I knew how to do. Like, I didn't know how to start a podcast 2 years ago. Had not a clue. Okay. I was just like, you know what? I'm doing this. And I don't care if it sounds like garbage or whatever, or the audio quality. Like, the first episodes, the audio quality was horrible. But I found over, by just doing it, I feel that the things that I need get flowed to me. I found Zencaster, I found Matchmaker, I found this latest one is called Audio Burst. So I can take the podcast and it'll break it into segments. If you don't want to listen to a full podcast, I could break it into segments, and I can just put a little segment onto YouTube or on any of my social media pages, and it saves me having to go over the audio myself. You know what I mean?
So it finds the segments.
Yeah,
by itself?
It breaks it down. It actually breaks it. It's called Audio Burst. I literally just found it. The day before yesterday.
Well, I'm going to check that out for my podcast, because that's a big time suck doing that.
Well, and it does transcriptions, and it's got premium service. It's got all sorts of. It used to be part of the Blueberry, suite, but it was a separate thing from Blueberry. It's like, I'm jumping on that one.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm going to check that out myself. Thanks for recommending that.
And you should, I don't know, if you're into podcasting, you should join my Discord server, because this is where I put all these resources. They're just compiled.
I I did see your link, and I appreciate you sending that. I definitely need to join that.
Yeah, it's where the doomer bloomer community is going to hang out, right? Like, where the interesting people in the community are contributing and making this podcast better, and joining the forum, right? I like to say we're the resurrection of good ideas, and I also like to say we're the cure for COVID-19. Uh, and when I say that, I mean not like physically the disease. I mean mentally the disease. It's taken up so much mental bandwidth, you know, and people are living in very uncertain times, as we've kind of alluded to, but there are resources and there are communities out there, uh, trying to change the world to positive, to make positive change in the world, and that's what we need right now. We don't need this discourse on the left. We don't need this discourse on the right. We need level-headed, reasonable, moderate people that are able to see the whole picture, and you take the best and you F the rest, is what I like to say.
Yeah,
and
that's Bruce Lee Jeet Kune Do. You absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own.
I love it. um, Here's a good question for you. If you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I already didn't? And you already said, uh, what is your why, Brandon?
Oh, that's really simple. I compete every day. That's who I am, and that's not a me against the world. That's a me and whoever is with me. Meaning, if that's my partner, my wife, my family, friends, someone I'm helping, someone I'm riding bikes with, a student who I'm teaching how to build a business plan or something like that. I just, that's who I am. I just always want to be better. I'm not competing necessarily with a person other than myself. So, so I really want to understand what I can do, because I've done things that I didn't think were possible. And one of the things that I tell small business owners and entrepreneurs that I talk with is, if you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to do something hard, and it might not even be an entrepreneur, it might be that you want to ride a century on your bike and you don't think you can do it. You have to believe you can do the thing that you're not sure you can do. And that doesn't make complete sense, but you have to get your head around that statement, and you actually have to do that, because if you don't do that, your self-talk will actually talk you out of it. So if you can believe you can do the thing that you're not sure you can do, then you can get there. But you have to hold those two things simultaneously in your head and make it happen. So for me, I just love to see what the possibilities are. Uh, I I love to sleep because I think it's important to get rest. I love sleeping because it gives me a better waking experience. But I can't wait to get up in the morning, and figure out what execute basically on what we're doing. I mean, last night I didn't want to go to bed because I was working on a writing project, and I was like, man, I don't want to go to bed. I can't. I'm gonna but I got to get some rest. So I'm gonna get to rest. I can't wait to get up the next morning. So I think that's it. That's really who I am, and my why is just want to be. I want to compete. I want to be better. I want to see what's possible.
I love it. Uh, went over that, and yeah. So here's a question for you. How can you be of service to your community and the world? And I referenced verse 17, and I doubted Ching a lot, but you could have your own interpretation of that.
I think I think you so I think there's this belief that you have to go pick up trash and do these. I'm using that as an example, not necessarily the thing, but there's this idea that to make the world a better place, you should give money to people who are not as fortunate, or you should clean up your local creek or clean up your beach. And I think all those things are important. I believe, though, that the source of making the world a better place, and whatever your definition of that may be, really starts at home. And if you want to make the world a better place, then recycle more. If you want to make the
Yeah.
world a better place, don't let the water run. If you want to make the world a better place and you live on the grid that burns coal, turn the light out. I mean, what happens is I believe sometimes we don't see the forest through the trees. I am not saying in any way that picking up trash in the local beach cleanup isn't important. It is important, and it makes our community better and cleaner and brings people together. But if you do that and you throw all your plastic or a lot of it away in the trash, then what are you really doing net for that? And I think this idea that even with kids, like saying the school systems need to be better, we need this, we need that. It feels like to me an excuse that if you want kids to be better, if you want kids to learn more, if you want kids to have better manners, then teach that at home, because it's not going to be taught in a 6-hour or 7-hour stint at a school with a teacher who's trying to manage a whole class, and then to blame it on a teacher or a school system that they're not doing this for our kids. Last I checked, you can teach your kid how to read a new book. You can expose them to something different. You can teach them right or wrong. That starts at home. And I think if we, as a world earth community, want to be better, then we need to build a stronger foundation. And that starts at home. And I get a little tired of thinking that there's going to be this outward group of rules and regulations and laws that are going to fix things. In the United States of America, we have a very large debate for a very long time going on about guns. And I find it crazy
Wow.
that we think that Congress is going to pass a law and suddenly we're not going to have any gun shootings. Bad people will get the things they need to do bad things, but bad people can be prevented from doing bad things because they are taught that those are bad things at home.
Well,
And
guns don't kill people. People kill people.
yeah, and I
Guns are
understand there's politics, right? But I think, it was a long answer to your question that probably some other guests might have answered shorter. But um, I think it's all about the foundation of ourselves. And, at the end of the day, that's how you do make the world a little bit better.
Well, I talk about the four virtues of stoicism: courage, wisdom, justice, and self-control. It starts with that first circle of self, and then, as you say, then the next circle out is family, community, and then the rest of humanity, and then the earth, right? But you're absolutely 100% accurate. It starts with self, right? And having that first island to yourself and taking care of that island and mowing your own grass and doing the maintenance required on your first self island. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else, really, in my opinion.
I
Um,
tend to agree.
um, yeah, so there's two more questions I'm going to ask you, and then we'll talk about where we can find your coaching links and that sort of things. Uh, so where do you think a doomer, and I define doomer loosely, but generally it refers to somebody who is in a darker state, depression, and how can they get on a path to becoming a bloomer in life, business, or relationships? What would be your best advice to somebody who's listening to this podcast and is not in the greatest mindset, but would like to, eventually improve their life and get on that better path to becoming a bloomer?
Start exercising daily for at least an hour in zone 2 of heart rate, if not zone 3. You can Google
Nice.
that if you don't know what it's talking about. But if you are in a darker state, the outcome of exercising is incredible. It has been shown in studies that exercising can have the same effect as drugs if you happen to be on an antidepressant or something. I'm not saying that in extreme cases there's not chemical imbalances that don't need drugs. I'm saying that I believe that a lot of it can be serviced by exercise, and also the drugs don't work for long periods of time. You
They're not
can't.
they're not designed to. They're
Right.
crutch.
Exactly. So I say exercising only because, for me, that has always gotten me out of the rut. And your body is designed to release incredible endorphins, which we don't have to go into the science right now, but trust that it happens and trust that you will feel better afterwards. And after you exercise, take a cold shower. There's a whole bunch of effects that happen in your brain and your body because of that. And I know that sounds like a weird, probably answer to what do you do? But once you do that and we've tuned your body and your mind, then we can worry about all these other things. Until then, I don't know. It's, we could teach someone how to do Excel spreadsheets or how to code or I don't know,
That's
do
why the
whatever.
first that's why the first doomer bloomer pillar is health. It's the number one pillar. If you don't
And,
have health,
and eat right. Yeah, I just want to add that. And what I mean by eat right is just one simple rule. Well, two things. If all you do is stop eating refined sugar and you drink enough water every day, which is at least probably half a gallon, depending on your size, that will change a ton. So that's really my prescription.
solid. Thank you. And second to last question is, what is your zombie plan? That was the bonus. It's my bonus question. Do you have a
Did I
zombie
answer
plan?
it?
No, you left it blank. So I'm curious.
What is my in case the zombies come?
Yeah, in case the zombies come, like the COVID zombies.
I
It's
don't
kind of a
know.
tongue in cheek question.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get a tongue in cheek answer for you, but or a real one. I I don't really I don't have a zombie plan, man. I think I'm just gonna have to face that head on, and that could be.
Well,
I,
you already live on a cliff.
I do live on a cliff. I mean, I think I'm gonna have to rely on my training and instincts to figure out what we're gonna do. But here's the truth, not the truth, but maybe as I'm talking out loud, thinking to myself, what is my zombie plan? We have a Class A 30-foot RV called No Regrets that is self-sufficient. So my zombie plan is that we're going to get in that RV, which is completely self-sufficient, and figure out where to go. If the earth is burning or has a major crack, I don't have an answer for that one. We'll have to accept our fate as it is dealt to us. But that's our zombie mobile.
Nice. Well, you're always welcome to come visit me in the Yukon because that's where I'll be.
Well, I appreciate that. If we can get there, then that'll be on the list. But you
Yeah.
also said Baja, Mexico, so it
Well,
seems to me that you've already made your decision.
I have two. I have two separate zombie plans.
I got you.
Because
Well,
fast walking zombies, they'll freeze in the north, and then slow walking zombies, they'll melt in the south.
I think that's a good plan. We would prefer to see you in Mexico.
Well, we'll put that on the bucket list for 2045.
There you go.
What else? Brandon, this has been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything you'd like to add? And you can obviously talk about your coaching and where people can find you and your social handles.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This has been really fun. I feel like there's been a lot of Brandonness given here, so I'm not going to add any more Brandonisms for today. Ironically, I don't sell my coaching to people anymore directly. You have to be a part of the idea that we can actually work together. So I have a print newsletter, and you can subscribe to that. With that print newsletter, you get all of my courses also included in that subscription. So you can get how to build a business plan at 13 slides, how to build a pitch deck, 9 days to turn yourself into a powerhouse, and a whole bunch of other great resources. So you got to get my print newsletter. And if you like it and the philosophy, then there's a path to working with me and my team directly. You can check that out at two places. One, Brandon, Brandon, C as in Charlie, white.com, or B as in business, successsecrets.com. And then I do a podcast and just build a business, Success Secrets. We're on all the platforms. You can check us out. And in there, we give all the links of where you can find us. So I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to let your listeners know where to find me. Thank you for that, Bill.
Well, I've gotten a whole heck of a lot out of this, and that's kind of been my litmus test lately. Is that if I feel I'm going to learn something, I feel like it could be of use to the community, then I'm going to allow them on, and we're going to have a dialogue and a discussion. You might hear my 2 cents, as you can probably tell. And for myself, like I got a lot of irons in the fire as well, guys. Building this community is definitely one of those irons. I would love your guys' help. You can follow us at the Doomer podcast on Twitter, the Doomer Bloomers on Instagram, Facebook, major platforms. I would really love it if you joined our Discord group. That's where I give free resources for people wanting to build businesses, podcasts, self-improvement. I have a reading list there. And yeah, if you're in the doomer mindset, just remember that this too shall pass. And as the Tao Te Ching says, every storm there is a calm, and every calm there is another storm. So just go through the cycles, and at a certain point, you're going to learn how to surf them. This has been Will S. with the Doomer Bloomer podcast. On behalf of myself and John Wynn, we love each and every one of you here in the community. Namaste. If you've been a longtime listener of the show, you know that we're trying to build a community. The Doomer Bloomers is a community for the resurrection of good ideas. If you would like to take part and help support the community, please consider joining my Discord group, becoming a level 1 Patreon subscriber, or making a tax refundable donation to my GoFundMe page. It would really help support the show. Let me know what you thought about this episode with Brandon. I really loved it. You can tweet me at the Doomer Bloomer or Doomer Podcast on Twitter with the hashtag ZombiePlan.